Um, with all the rookies coming in, the team, we're pretty high on how the team is built. I know I'm super positive. I actually am much like you, Jack. I thought that the team was going to finish off, 12-5, 13-4. So pretty high praise, to take this team and have 2 or 3 more wins than they did last season, especially, when you're bringing in a lot of youth. Trey Lance going to be a first year starter. A lot, Aaron Banks most likely going to be moving in at left guard. So new guys in the secondary, things like that, and still thinking that they could actually elevate themselves from last year. Mm-hmm. But you were mentioning, what are maybe some blind spots that we're seeing, or some things we might be taking for granted or overlooking? What do you think could be some things that, or what would hold them back from being able to achieve 12-5, 13-4, like both of us expect them to be?
Yeah, I think you kind of almost have to do that position group by position group, because if you want to nitpick them and you want to say this is the reason why they're not going to be successful, it's pretty easy to do that. I think, quarterback position, Trey Lance doesn't turn out to be the guy that you expected him to be, right? Say what you want about Jimmy Garoppolo, but when Garoppolo's been healthy, he's been successful. I know that there's other reasons for it other than just Jimmy Garoppolo, but still, when he's been healthy, the team's won. So if Trey Lance isn't the guy that you isn't worth the investment you made, that could be a reason why they don't win, 10 games or 9 games even. Don't make the playoffs, I guess, is the way to put it. The running back room, they don't stay healthy, because we've seen that already with that group. Tyrion Davis-Price isn't the breakaway threat that some people think, and so all of it, because they don't have that running back that can be the game breaker, and they've kind of put it on Trey Lance's shoulders to do that. It all falls apart. Alex Mack doesn't come back, and Daniel Brunskill is fine at right guard, so they try to do Drake Brendel at center, and he flops. Things like that. I mean, you can go through, and there's enough. You can go through every position group if you want to be that way. You can be negative on it. I'm trying to just trying to be realistic about it. It's really hard for me to be negative on this team. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that needs to happen for me, because obviously the blatant elephant in the room is what Trey Lance is going to be. But I've personally seen enough out of Trey Lance, not only what he was able to do as far as his growth from rep to rep, basically, and game to game, but also just the character of the kid, his work ethic, his ability to want to be a constant student, his humility, like the way he carries himself in the media, and just the leadership, like the intangibles, calling guys that were just drafted, even though he was just drafted last year, right? Getting guys together. He even did that last offseason, working with the receiving core and holding, private workouts with the guys and things like that. You see him hanging out with the team, like Kittle and Sudfeld and all of that, going to Warriors games, like just things like that really just make me believe not only does he understand the role that he's in, but even if he doesn't get it immediately, Jack, he's going to figure it out because he's willing to put in the work and he's doing all of the right things that you would want from your starting quarterback. But the biggest thing for me is, especially with, Trey Lance's strength being the play action pass and just how this team is built as far as run first, we got to be able to have some explosion out of the running game. And I don't mean like the 60-yard breakaway touchdowns like Mostert and Breida had in 2019, but a consistent rushing attack that could average over 4.5 yards per carry. And for everything that we, mentioned about Elijah Mitchell, he's very, very good, but he sometimes struggled to keep a game where he's having over 4.5 yards per carry. And for everything that there was flashes of Trey Sermon that we saw, same, like we can't just be a volume game where we're just rushing the ball so many times without getting the production of 4.5 plus yards per carry. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'm assuming is going to happen. But the only reason why it happened last year, or they were anywhere close, was because Debo was averaging like over 5 yards per carry, and he started getting a lot of carries in the second half of the season. So that running back room has to be a bulk of the explosion in the rushing attack because, we don't know, but I mean, at least from reports, Debo wants to play more of a traditional wide receiver role and doesn't want to necessarily be that wide back position anymore. So if there's any truth to that, we definitely need that running back room to maintain that 4.5 plus per carry average. And that's something that I'm assuming, Jack, without without maybe much evidence to say that that's going to happen, right? Especially with the question marks at the offensive line, without knowing if Mack is going to be there and what is Banks going to be like.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I definitely think there's some good points that you made right there in the running game, especially like you said. If they could just be consistently chewing up clock, getting 4.5 yards a carry, like you said, I think that's part of where they had some issues last year. Is they weren't getting 4.5 yards per carry. They weren't up that high. They're at 4 point. They finished the season, I think, at 4.1, 4.0, somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really, it was feast or famine with them. They'd either rip off a big one or they were, it wasn't consistent, chunks like we've seen with them at different points throughout the Shanahan regime. So if they can get that with Tyrion Davis-Price and have him be healthy so that if Elijah Mitchell goes down, they have somebody that they can fill in right there. And if I think they're going to be able to probably do that. And I think you go to, if Deebo Samuel is able to play wide receiver full time and Trey Lance is the guy who we think it is, I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree as well. Like, I think that Kyle Shanahan and especially Anthony Lynn being there, because Anthony Lynn, for all of his flaws that, might be there as far as game calling and, maybe some late game decision making and things like that, as far as what he's able to do with running backs, it's pretty elite. He's always been able to have really good rushing attack. And even with Detroit last year, he had, those guys, that rushing attack was pretty formidable. So I think that he's going to bode well for the team. And and other than that, I think that just sets up the rest of everything else. Another thing that I am assuming is going to happen, Jack, without much evidence there, is this team is going to be much better. This offense is going to be much better in the first quarter than they had been last season, because especially with the way the schedule is this year, they're going to be playing some pretty prolific offenses throughout the year, and hoping that the defense could just keep the game extremely close in the first half, like they kind of did last season. I think the defense is still up to the challenge, but I would hope that this team could help them by scoring more in that first quarter, early in the second quarter, and not just waiting till the last 2 minutes of every half to really, put together a drive and score a touchdown. I think that's something that I assume will happen more with this offense, but who knows? And I think that is going to be pretty important for this team to reach the levels that we're expecting. I don't think that they've lost so many close games last season. I think just having the start be a lot better keeps it easier for them to win, because I just think they're going to have more than enough talent to win. Execution is the really big thing that we need to see, and starting from minute one.
Yeah, and just kind of checking over in the comments, there was, for example, Tom comes in and he says, we're either going to be 14-3 or 13-4 this year. That's his thought. It will be us against Tampa Bay in the NFC Championship game. The winner of that game will play Buffalo in the Super Bowl. And, and then we have people telling him that he's crazy, or no, just says sorry, but no. And I come up with 13 wins on that when I look at this schedule as well. The way that I see it, you're talking about starting off strong, and I know you're speaking about games, like the start of a game in particular, like first quarter. But I think it goes for the record as well for the season. If they can come out and start strong, part of the 2019 team was that they were lucky in the beginning of the season. They start off 8-0. They kind of struggled down the second half of the season before getting it all together in the playoffs when they got healthy again with D Ford. But that was a team that started off hot. They started off 8-0, right? I think they're 8-0 before they lost their first game. And when I look at this the way the schedule falls for the 49ers, the toughest game in the first 6 weeks is Denver, in Denver. Again, and I that's just that for me, that's the toughest, I think. And I think that they can start off 6-0 and put themselves in a really good spot. And even the Denver game, the reason I feel like the 49ers can win there is that's a game against the team with a brand new head coach who's never done it before, with an offensive coordinator who's never done it before, and a defensive coordinator who's never done it before. And there's nothing about that game from a coaching standpoint that says that the 49ers are in trouble. I understand Russell Wilson's there, and he's given the 49ers fits, but that's I think this is a little bit different situation. I think the 49ers are going to be able to handle it. And we've seen what they can do against the Rams. The Rams are everybody's pick to click this year. The 49ers beat them twice and were ahead of them by 10 points in the fourth quarter before folding. And that was with the quarterback who was missing wide open receivers, not throwing the ball to him.
Yeah. I mean, I penciled in Denver as their first loss of the season. I have them going 5-1 in that 6-game stretch. But I mean, I don't necessarily think that there's a team on paper that I look at and just says that much better than the 49ers. I think the only reason too that it's even close is because, Trey Lance is just a question mark. We don't know how good he's actually going to be. We kind of believe maybe his floor isn't as bad. So we think that he'll be good enough to keep the team where it needs to be. But if he turns out being epic, Jack, I don't think there's a team that's even close to the 49ers. Really, if we get the elite type of quarterback play where we're talking Trey Lance Pro Bowl in this year, which I'm not stating that that's going to happen. I'm just saying if we get a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback play, you got to say this team, it has to be the favorite for the Super Bowl with all the talent that it's around and the type of defense that has been constructed and all that kind of stuff. So it's really just about Trey, like you mentioned on multiple occasions. If Trey is just an average quarterback, kind of like Jimmy G, then this team probably goes 12-5, 13-4, no problem. If he ends up playing lights out, like Pro Bowl level, this team is probably number one in the NFC and probably the Super Bowl champs, right? So it's really up to that. So I know this is all projections and conjecture at this time, but I'm really pretty confident that this is going to be one of the better teams in the NFC. And I believe they win the NFC West. I don't know about you.
That's what I have. I have them as winning the NFC West as well. And again, I feel like they're really good. And here's the thing, okay, we both are pretty confident about this team. This brings us back to that whole blind spots thing. Mm-hmm. This team lost Laken Tomlinson. They lost DJ Jones, K'Waun Williams, and Jaquiski Tartt. How did they replace them?
Aaron Banks.
Okay, go ahead. You run through them.
So Aaron Banks, Javon Kinlaw, to be determined, right? It's either Quez or maybe Womack for K'Waun, and then Oren, right, for the safety.
Okay, so we have Laken Tomlinson, and you're saying it's going to be Banks, which I'd agree with, and if we're going to, and I'm going to qualify my statement in that I don't believe that everything I hear out of the 49ers is a lie. And when I hear Kyle Shanahan at the owners meeting say that they were ready to start Aaron Banks at the second half of the season, but then they started rolling, I don't think he's lying, because he said the same thing about Trey Lance, and I think he would have made the change if they weren't in playoff contention. You would have seen Trey Lance take over earlier and get those reps. Banks is a guy who people just we haven't seen enough of, and so he's an unknown from that point. So if I can understand why people would question that, although I don't question it as much as they do, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so there we go. And then on the defensive side, DJ Jones. I like DJ Jones. Thought he was a really good player. I have a hard time believing that a guy who played 50% of the snaps or less is going to make or break your defensive line.
Right.
And I do agree with you that it's going to be replacing DJ Jones as Javon Kinlaw. But on top of that, they have a strong group amount of depth. That defensive line is, I mean,
the rotation's nasty.
Yes, right. I mean, you could build out four sets of defensive line deep, and I think be pretty solid, even in the regular season with guys who some people don't know about, but are pretty good, have been decent with the 49ers practice squad over the last couple of years. So I don't have an issue. I think the defensive line is going to be just fine without DJ Jones. I don't think that's a major issue for the 49ers. Didn't the 49ers go to the Super Bowl without DJ Jones in 2019? Didn't he get injured against the Seahawks on Monday Night Football and miss the rest of the season that year?
Mm-hmm.
I believe, right? I mean, and again, this isn't to take away from DJ Jones. He's a really good player. He deserved the money that he got. If Denver wants to pay you, pay you. The Laken Tomlinson thing, again, Laken Tomlinson is a guy who I think gets a lot of credit from 49er fans because he is available and he was there every day. But when you sit down and you really look at his play, it's not something that's, they can't overcome the loss of Laken Tomlinson, at least in my opinion. And then, the nickel cornerback, I do agree. That's K'Waun Williams. That's one right now where we don't know. They don't put a lot of emphasis on that spot, in terms of capital. We know that they beat the Rams in the Week 18 game with Darqueze Dennard and Dante Johnson splitting the game up at in the slot. We don't expect him to do that throughout the whole season, but that's definitely to be determined there. And from a coverage standpoint, I would be really fine with the 49ers as a cover guy having Samuel Womack be my nickel corner because of his speed and his ability to drive on the ball and those types of things. I think he'd be very good in there, but I think they might be having him play more on the outside. And then this was a long answer by me, but then at safety, you went with Oren, with George Odom.
George Odom, sorry.
Yeah,
they're gonna put a linebacker back there in Oren.
You went with George Odom. I know. I started to say it, and then I realized that you went with George Odom. I think it's going to be Talanoa Hufanga. I think the 49ers like Talanoa Hufanga more than everybody else does. I understand that he made some mistakes as a rookie. I saw it too, just like all of you. I chuckled to myself when he blew the coverage against the Minnesota Vikings because it was an awful rep. If you're a 49ers fan and you're gonna show the highlight of the touchdown where Talanoa Hufanga blows it against the Minnesota Vikings, you've got to go you've got to also show the highlight of the NFC Championship game when Jimmy Ward does the exact same thing. The only difference was that Ward's didn't cost him a touchdown because the receiver dropped the ball. But he did the same exact thing against the Rams in the NFC Championship game. I think early in the second half it was. So, Talanoa Hufanga gets ripped. I don't know why. I think people, don't like the long hair and they don't like the comparisons to a Hall of Famer. And I agree with them that there shouldn't be any comparisons to
Polamalu.
To Troy Polamalu, right? But I think that he's a guy who can start, and I think the 49ers like him, and they're 2-1 with him as a starting safety.
Right.
And the one time that they lost, he wasn't playing with Jimmy Ward. He was playing with somebody who's not on the team anymore. I don't know. I can't remember his name.
And also, sorry, your answer was so fire that
I set your building on fire.
They're like, yo, Jack's bringing the heat. Some of the comment section is saying, but I mean, look, sometimes we get nostalgic about certain players. K'Waun wasn't that good last season, Jack. And, K'Waun has, obviously been such a good player for the 49ers for a long time. He's been in and out of the lineup because of injuries. Last year, I've seen so many times where he just got burnt. He wasn't as quick as he was able to be, and seemed like he was losing more battles than he was winning. So, I mean, obviously the camaraderie, he is a team favorite, and but I think it's time to go younger and develop another guy there. And I think that a lot of the safety play is actually going to be easier because our cornerback room just got a lot better, Jack. And so that I think is going to help out the safeties where you're not going to be seeing as many blown coverages by our corners because our cornerback room has gotten a lot better. And one of the reasons why I think the second half of the season is going to be pretty dominant, Jack, is I think Jason Verrett comes back after the bye week. I don't know if he's going to be healthy enough. I know a lot of people don't think he's going to make the team, but I do think he's going to make the team. I do think that they're going to keep him on the PUP list, and maybe after the bye is where they bring him out. And if he can stay anywhere near as healthy as he was in 2020, him and Ward on the outside, Jack, I think that's the best cornerback duo that we've had since '94 with Deion Sanders. And I think it was, I forget who was on that. It was a lot on the other side of him. But the Super Bowl year, or
Deion Sanders?
Deion Sanders, and who was on the other side of Deion and Eric Davis, right? Eric Davis and Deion Sanders. I think Ward and Verrett would be the best duo since them, right? So I really think that I just really think that there's a lot of depth on this team. I think that the defense is going to be. I mean, we're getting a whole season of Dre Greenlaw, and he might not even be. He might not even beat out Azeez as far as his playing time and all that kind of stuff. So it's just there's a lot of depth and a lot of stars all over the field. And I just think that this is a very, very formidable team that the team has put together, 49ers put together.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's really good there. We also